Hey everybody, it's Terry Battisti with the Bass Fishing Archives, and I'm sitting here ICAST 2022 in the Yakima Baits booth with longtime Elite Series angler Bernie Schultz and Jarod Higginbotham from Yakima Baits. And I wanted to stop and talk to Bernie about Hildebrandt's history with sport fishing, or bass fishing in particular. And they were really the company that came up with blades, especially the quality of blades that we see today.
That's true.
Yeah, Bernie, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, it all started in 1899 with John J. Hildebrandt. There's a long history, family lineage. The company was actually owned by the family up into the early 2000s. John J. built spinners, inline spinners, and then started expanding on that to some extended, like variant multiple arm spinner baits. And what he did more so than anything was develop the premium blade, the best quality willow leaf, Colorado, and Indiana style blade. He stamped his blades from high quality brass and plated them with solid gold, with nickel silver, and I'm not sure exactly. I think it's a combination on the copper finish.
Yeah, genuine copper. Yeah.
Genuine copper. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he kind of set the bar, and it hasn't changed to this day. There's, like I told you in our previous conversation, there's not a pro on tour that doesn't carry Hildebrandt blades.
Yeah.
And then, this is 120 plus years later, and he's still the guy.
Yeah.
John J. Hildebrandt started it all. I've worked with the family for decades. My involvement started in my garage. I had a rep that was working, we shared another product line, and he happened to be at my house. We were going to go fishing, and we were getting the boat prepped, and he saw these spinner baits that I was working on in my garage. And he wanted to present those to Hildebrandt, to Alan Hildebrandt, the dad, and Mark Hildebrandt, the son, who was taking over at the time. And they were enamored with the look of the bait. It was unlike any spinner bait that was out there previous to that, and basically it was a lifelike appearance. It ended up being packaged as the blade, and the reason it was called the blade is it's got a very thin profile, but the whole idea behind this bait was to present it to fish in clear water that feed by sight. And so the cosmetics had to be believable. We wanted cut gills and a big mylar eye, and the profile and the gradient finish that a live bait fish would have, which would be dark to light. That's how nature made it.
Yep.
So we utilized those characteristics in the design of this bait, and it was immediate success. Bass Pro bought more than we expected. Unfortunately, the Hildebrandt family didn't stockpile any inventory. They built to order, and we got overwhelmed. And we kind of missed an opportunity that year. Bass Pro wanted them so bad they came back a second year. You don't usually get a second chance with Bass Pro.
Right.
But we survived that, and the blade established itself as a clear water grass type spinner bait, and that thin profile helps it shed grass. It came in multiple colors, all bait fish matching patterns with multiple blade configurations, and then because of its popularity, we expanded it to different sizes, and it's still desired to. I mean, we still have a presence in the market today, and that was in the late 1980s, rather, and early 1990s, when we finally got our wheels going in production on the blade, and that led to other subsequent designs like the tin roller and the drum roller, which is our more recent design.
Okay.
So that's kind of in a nutshell, but I think the lure that stood the test of time better than any other in the product line is the Snaggle Sally. And
Thing's been around since Shannon was making
spinner
baits.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's an inline spinner bait. It comes through anything. That's the beauty of this bait. It'll traverse grass, stumps, flooded brush, you name it, it'll come through it.
Yeah. Well, it actually had a part to do in the 1978 Bassmaster Classic on Ross Barnett.
That's right.
When Bobby Murray took the front end of that thing and put it on a Johnson spoon.
There you go. There's a lot of variations. The guys used to put a Silver Doctor on the back of it, but this was actually introduced to the Hildebrandt family by Casey Childrey, the son of Lou Childrey. Lou's rods and reels, as everybody's familiar with today. And Casey brought the idea to the Hildebrandt family, and they decided to build it. And they're based on the Gulf Coast, and that whole tidal system from East Texas all the way to the Florida Panhandle utilized inline spinnerbaits. So the demand was already there. Casey brought the idea to a company that built premium blades and spinners. The next thing was, just production capability and meeting the demand, and it took off. And this bait's still on the line today, sells well if we could get them.
You're right.
That's Jared's department. But to bring Jarod into this, I mean, the Hildebrandt family held the brand for over 100 years, and then they decided, Alan was aging, and Alan's still alive and still healthy, and Mark decided he wanted to try new ventures, so they decided to sell the brand. Yakima became the ultimate holder of the brand. Yakima's a family-owned company. Multiple families own the brand, multiple brands, and they're based in Washington, Yakima, Washington. And what I like about it is I still have some ownership in the baits that I design. I still have some authority in how they're developed, and I like working with a small group of core people. Yeah, I could have sold the idea to a bigger company, mass-produced them, and lost some of that. But to me, it wasn't about the money. It was about maintaining the integrity of the bait and making sure that the end user had the same experience that I intended when I designed it. And that's where Jarod comes in.
Yeah, the Hildebrandt thing is, it's such a unique deal to have products, from 1899, right? Like, I mean, you stare at this package and it's just history, and you stare at Hildebrandt and, a lot of people think Bernie Schultz because he's been with Hildebrandt for a long time. So anytime I have a Hildebrandt question, right, somehow Bernie's name comes up, which is really cool, right? I mean, when you can stake a claim, with your name and be with a company that long and, produce, quality baits and quality information for people for over 30 years. I mean, think how many people, he's helped, into Hildebrandt, like, guided them towards this. Yeah. And like Bernie said, it's a premium product. I think that's the biggest thing that, most people look at is it's premium, it's quality. It is the top of the line. The blades, there's not a better one.
All made by hand.
All made by hand, and they're all assembled by hand. I mean, all the heads are poured by hand. Everything's still done by hand. Like when we carve the molds, if we ever have to redo them, they're all carved by hand, like with an X-Acto knife on a piece of lead. Wow. And then that mold is, placed in, that is placed in a mold. We make us one small mold, and then it comes into, a larger spinning mold. Is how we actually make all those heads. They're all handmade, and then they're hand painted, hand assembled, hand packaged, hand boxed. I mean, everything is done. There's no production line. There's no nothing. The production line is like, I did this piece, you do this piece, you do that piece, and that's how it goes. And that's how we maintain that quality of each bait is handled.
So can you talk a little bit about the method and the materials that you use to stamp the blades out?
So we have the same company, Stamp the Blades, that has been doing it forever. And they're rack plated. They're not like spray painted. Like everybody else is pretty much just a spray painted cover over brass. That's what it looks like. And that's where I think the Hildebrandt is different, because the 24 karat gold, the nickel, the genuine copper, right? Yeah. The reflective points are different. They all stand up on end versus being flat surfaced, right? And so you get thousands of reflective points versus just, a few flat reflective surfaces. And so that's where that bright, beautiful finish comes from. And, I've always thought, the same with our rooster tail, is genuine silver blade, that, it's natural. Everything a fish sees is natural when it bites it, right? And so gold, copper, and nickel are they're natural elements in the earth, right? And so they create this more natural of a presentation for the fish. And I think that's that's just one of the other things. Other than somehow all those years ago they got the cup exactly right on every blade. And everyone I was talking to a gentleman, I can't remember his name, but he told me that he was friends with the guys that designed the blades way back when or whatever, and they tried to mimic the vibration to mimic a school of shad. That was the idea. I have it on a piece of paper in my office. I got all this cool history stuff, but that was the idea. And so to think of those types of things that many years ago and come out with a product that hasn't had to change and still leads, like, and we're here 2022, and still the best on the market.
Yeah, we're the standard.
It's the standard. Absolutely. I mean, no one can beat it.
So the gauge of the metal used is thicker than everybody else.
Yes. Correct.
Absolutely. That's what gives the thump, right?
Yes. And the durability, and that's what allows those finishes to stay, because a thinner blade, when you're banging it through rocks or brush or hitting on stumps, right, if you bend it at all, what happens? It cracks.
Right.
And when it cracks,
It
what
sheds.
happens? It sheds the finish.
Yeah.
I don't think that's possible. And not only that, we use these for salmon back home now. Hildebrandt is transferred into the salmon world. I mean, and so because again, the way they shine, those fish absolutely love them. And if a 30-pound Chinook, hits one of these things at 30 miles an hour, and it still stays completely intact and beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, they're built to last.
Yeah, I mean, I have dozens of blades because my spinnerbait box is not a box. It's a box of, assembled spinnerbaits.
Yep.
And then I have another box with skirts, clevises, so I can build stuff.
Right,
on the fly.
right. Modify them.
Beads
And
and
I
snaps,
have minus copper because it doesn't matter what kind of copper you're using or how you're putting it on, they're going to corrode some.
Yeah.
But the gold and the silver Hildebrandts that I have in my box do not corrode. Whereas I can get another off-brand blade and they chrome plate it instead of silver plating.
They'll
right?
pit immediately.
And they pit,
Yep.
like you say, when you hit a rock, they'll start chipping off and all that stuff. So,
Yep.
yeah, without a doubt, Hildebrandt's the highest quality blade
Premium.
out there.
Yep, without question.
Yeah, I'm so proud that it's still built by a family-owned business
Yeah.
in this country, and it's been going on. I've been with the brand since the 90s. I've been the only pro to ever endorse the brand. The Hildebrandt family was very reluctant to sign a professional angler. It was foreign to them. They didn't know what to think of that, but they wanted my designs, and it was kind of a package deal. But it ended up being a great marriage and friendship. I mean, I'm still friends with the Hildebrandt family to this day, and now I got new friends in Yakima. and it's just nice and rewarding after all these years to see that the bait's still viable, still has, and it kind of created a whole following. I mean, this was the first Clearwater spinnerbait that had lifelike attributes of a bait fish, and now the room's full of them. We're in a 100,000 square foot building full of knockoffs.
And I remember when the bait came out in the early 90s, you designed it for Florida fishing.
I did.
But it actually took off in the west, the southwest, like Southern California, Lake Mead, where you've got 35-foot visibility. It really changed the game of spinnerbait fishing.
Right.
From the opaque, flat rubber skirts to now we've got a skirt that
silicone, high quality,
the lifelike head. Like
plus the gradient finish, dark to light. That was a big deal for me. And there are other pockets, like when you go to Ontario, there are guys up there that they beg me for these things. And because of COVID, production's been a big challenge, but we're getting back on track, and hopefully that demand will hang in there and we'll get caught up. But it's rewarding as a designer and an angler to see people, even to this day, how many years is that? 30 some odd years. It's still kind of the standard for Clearwater spinnerbaits.
That's why it's so important when we design lures. Yakima Bait's been designing lures forever, but and they're all quality. They last the test of time, and that's what's important. Is it's done right the first time.
Yeah.
Like our rooster tail's been around since the 40s, and it's the top. It's the top of its class.
Right.
Spinning gloves, same thing, and we've made the acquisitions for flatfish, which was been around since the 30s, right? And so we have all these very long-lasting, family-owned, very prideful brands that we take care of.
Well put.
Yeah, and that's as a country kid, I take pride in all of that, right? Like I take pride in Bernie's accomplishments through this, right? And so I work with Bernie all the time trying to get new stuff out. And so when I get those phone calls at the factory, I mentioned Thomas Heinen. He's a kid from Kansas. He's one of our young pros. He's 20. And he calls me about the blade, right? And he is excited, like this kid found the golden goose, and he is so pumped about these, right? And so he posts on his YouTube, and he's getting this demand for them. And so it's just a really neat thing when you get something right, like. When you get it right and you know it's right,
it'll survive.
It'll survive.
Yeah.
And Buzz Ramsey always says that if you want to prolong the life of a product, you have to teach them the technique, and the product has to be right. And Bernie's still teaching the technique. The product's been right since he started, so it's going to follow suit.
Yep. Cool.
Been a good ride.
It's not over
I'm
yet.
still upright.
Awesome. Well, guys, I appreciate your time and
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah, anytime.
All right.